President Trump's illegal immigration crackdown taking shape here at home and abroad. Right now, ICE agents are continuing their apprehension of criminal illegal aliens. Nearly 1,000 were taken into custody on Sunday when ICE officials were in Chicago. Now, a Homeland Security official is telling Fox News that New York City is, quote, the next target. The president also overcame the first major pushback against his mass deportation policy from Colombia, all in the first week of his new administration. Hello, everyone. This is Outnumbered. I'm Emily Campagno here with my co-hosts, Harris Faulkner and Kayleigh McEnany. And also joining us today, Lisa Booth, Fox News contributor, and Jason Chaffetz, Fox News contributor and former Utah congressman. Now, the president's mass deportation policy appeared to spark a trade war with Colombia yesterday, only for them to quickly cave after initially rejecting 2 flights of illegal immigrants. President Trump's threats included a travel ban, immediate visa revocations, and ordering 25% tariffs on all goods coming into the U.S. from Colombia. Now, that would jump to 50% after 1 week if they did not comply. So they did. Colombian officials put out this statement, quote, Colombia, under the direction of President Gustavo Petro, has the presidential plane ready to facilitate the return of the compatriots who were to arrive in the country today in the morning on deportation flights. Meanwhile, the first of 1,500 U.S. Marines and U.S. Army personnel began arriving at our southern border. Their mission? Make good on President Trump's campaign promise to bring back his effective Remain in Mexico policy. The Coast Guard getting involved, too, intercepting a boat carrying illegal migrants that was sinking in U.S. waters. The Coast Guard's alien expulsion flight operations span between California and Texas, and it's all part of the president's illegal immigration crackdown that border czar Tom Homan says is only getting started.
So is this what we will see every single day, ending in what the president has promised is millions and millions being deported?
Yes, but you're going to see the numbers steadily increase, the number of arrests nationwide as we open up the aperture.
The estimates of perhaps those who have been convicted or arrested in the past, 700,000 to over 1 million. So after you do that, then you go after everybody who is there illegally.
If you're in the country illegally, you're on the table. Because it's not okay to, violate laws of this country. You got to remember, every time you enter this country illegally, you violated a crime under Title 8, United States Code 1325. It's a crime. So if you're in the country illegally, you got a problem. And that's why I'm hoping those who are in the country illegally who have not been ordered removed by the federal judge should leave.
And Vice President JD Vance also defended the president's executive order revoking birthright citizenship.
Well, this is a country founded by immigrants.
Well, this is a country founded by... This is a very unique country, and it was founded by some immigrants and some settlers. But just because we were founded by immigrants doesn't mean that 240 years later that we have to have the dumbest immigration policy in the world. No country says that temporary visitors, their children, will be given complete access to the benefits and blessings of American citizenship. America should actually look out for the interests of our citizens first. And that means, again, if you're here permanently and lawfully, your kid becomes an American citizen. If you're not here permanently, if you're not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States and don't plan to be, why would...
So here we go. President Trump got in a trade war with Colombia, and immediately the Colombian government caved. Let's talk about it on Azimuth Podcast. I'm Barrett McNabb. So it's interesting, when in my military career, one of the most difficult things I ever had to do was to reroute traffic over international airspace. I was in Kuwait City in Kuwait in Camp Doha. I was in Camp Arif Jan in Kuwait, and I got an immediate call from the Deputy Commanding General for Operations to reroute his aircraft from Egypt and clear airspace over Saudi Arabia so that he could return to Kuwait, because ISIS was making major gains towards the United States Embassy in Baghdad, Iraq. And so we got this call, hey, look, you need to clear the airspace and reroute that. And that's one of those things that, as an infantry officer and a foreign area officer, you're not necessarily trained to do, but you figure it out. And that's what I did. So the interesting thing is these Colombian illegal immigrants were on C-17 Globemasters going to Colombia from the United States. They were military aircraft. And so the amount of coordination that was going on in between the United States military, the Colombian military, the civilian FAA, the counterpart for Colombia, it all had to be synchronized, and everything was good to go. The aircraft were en route, and just as they were about to land in Colombian airspace, the president of Colombia said, no, these aircraft cannot land. And so then goes the deconfliction, where you have to have those aircraft returning back to their point of origin in the United States. And now, obviously, it made the current administration that's only been in office now for 6 days have egg on their face, because it made everybody look bad, because there was all of this work that had been done behind the scenes in order to get these aircraft into Colombia. And so for them to get turned around at the last second, is obviously disappointing. It's embarrassing. And Donald Trump immediately took to his Truth Social to slam the president of Colombia and to immediately say, look, these are what's going to happen. You're going to get the tariffs. You're going to get ban on visas for visiting personnel. You're going to get visas canceled for people that are already in the United States. It is going to be a bad day for you. Now, here's the thing. AOC jumped on this bandwagon over the weekend and tweeted out, like, this is great. Just to let you know, these are not tariffs on the countries. These are going to be passed on directly to the consumer. So Donald Trump's stunt is making you pay more for coffee. But here's the thing, AOC. There are other countries other than Colombia that produce coffee. In fact, most countries produce more coffee than Colombia does. Thailand does, Vietnam does, Peru does. So anyway, there are other countries where you could get coffee. Now, what happens is Colombia would lose market share, and that would be immediately filled back up with all of the other countries that produce coffee. And that's the damaging thing that Colombia realized is as that market share went away, it would not come back. And so that's why it was so quick to turn around and to change their tune. And the president of Colombia immediately said, hey, you know what? I can use my presidential plane to fly to the United States, pick these guys up, and then bring it back to my country. Sorry, I was just kidding about that. And, I'll pay for all the gas and my flight hours on my aircraft. And so, that is just a complete backpedal from what Colombia was trying to do and be the big guy on the block, and they just realized that they're not. The United States is the big kid on the block. And so this is just an example of what is going on, and having America first, America power, having Donald Trump back in the office, countries are starting to respect us again. It took not but 2 hours for that Colombian president to just backpedal very quickly and immediately offer up all of his money to repatriate the people that are in our country illegally. It's just a continuation of the promises that Donald Trump kept. I mean, the two biggest questions on people's mind was the economy, and it was immigration, specifically illegal immigration. And Donald Trump has immediately sent active duty Army and Marines to the border. You saw the video. And he's making good on the promises that he's going to defend us. Now, here's the thing. When you talk about that we are a nation of immigrants, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. When the nation was founded by settlers and then after a country through immigration, people stopped in at Ellis Island and they signed in. They just didn't go to a random port and down in Florida and from Europe and just go through the country. No, they went to New York. They sailed by the Statue of Liberty. They went to Ellis Island and they signed in on the dotted line. Who are you? Who are the family members that you're bringing? And they signed in. You can go and at the museum and look at all the record books of everybody that signed in. So they didn't sneak in. And that's the huge problem that we're seeing is we do have ports of entry where you can come in and sign in and declare asylum and things like that. It's the people that deliberately are evading the ports of entry and crossing through the desert or through tunnels and things like that. And then when they just so happen to get caught, they claim asylum, which triggers all this nonsense for immigration judges and things like that. But still, it's so important to realize that there is a legal pathway to come into the country. And the problem is people are just not using it. And now there are nations like Colombia and other South American nations that are going to step up, and even Colombia said the Darien Gap between Colombia and Panama, which is a notorious dangerous area for illegal immigrants to be moving through as they make their way up to the United States. They're going to go and put more resources there and stop that pathway. One of the things that's super important about that is there are cartels that are charging all kinds of money. There's people that are being kidnapped going through the cartel land. There are Chinese camps that are there that are not necessarily run by the Chinese government, but they do not let Westerners in and around that area to film reporters and such because they don't want people seeing what they're doing. But they're full up, straight up Chinese cities as people from China start migrating their way and infiltrate across the border as well. So this is hugely important that South America is on notice, and Donald Trump put them that way. So thanks so much for tuning into Azimuth Podcast, and please stay tuned after these messages.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy our show with all the stories we share, we would love your support.
And it's as easy as clicking that subscribe or follow button. This will ensure you never miss an episode and keeps us bringing you these important stories. Your support makes a huge difference. Thank you so much for being part of our podcast family.
Thanks, and keep tuning in.
Pete Hegseth, it was a tie. Bipartisan opposition, smallest margin since the job was created. You had to break that tie. If the nominee can't unite your party, how's he going to lead 3 million people?
Well, look, I think Pete is a disruptor, and a lot of people don't like that disruption, but Margaret, that disruption is incredibly necessary. If you think about all of those bipartisan massive votes, we have to ask ourselves, what did they get us? They got us a country where we fought many wars over the last 40 years, but haven't won a war about as long as I've been alive. They've got us a military with a major recruitment crisis, a procurement price crisis that's totally dysfunctional, where we buy airplanes for billions and billions of dollars, terrible cost overruns, the delivery dates are always delayed. So we need a big change. Now, admittedly, there are people who don't like that big change, but it is necessary, and it's explicitly what Donald J. Trump ran on, and I think part of the reason why the American people elected him their 47th president.
So the main objective is changing all of that? That it's going to be Pete Hegseth alone?
I'd say the main problem the main thing that we want Pete Hegseth to do is to fix the problems at the Department of Defense. And unfortunately, there are many. We've gotten into way too many wars that we don't have a plan for winning. We've gotten into way too many misadventures that we shouldn't have got into in the very first place. And our procurement process, Margaret, is incredibly broken. We're in an era.
Decisions.
Well, of course, they're policy decisions, but they're also logistical and implementation decisions. If you look at where we are with the rise of artificial intelligence, with the rise of drone technology and drone warfare, we have to really, top to bottom, change the way that we fund the procurement of weapons, the way that we arm our troops. This is a major period of disruption, and we think Pete Hegseth is the guy to lead the job. Now, there's another element to this, Margaret, too, which is we believe that military morale, at least until the election of President Trump, was historically low. You had the Army missing recruitment goals by tens of thousands of soldiers, and already recruitment is starting to pick up because Pete Hegseth is fundamentally a warfighter's leader at the Department of Defense. He is a guy who sees not through the perspective of the generals or the bureaucrats. He looks at things through the perspective of the men and women that we send off to fight in our wars.
Both the Wall Street Journal and the National Review, conservative publications, as you know, have been critical of Tulsi Gabbard. The Review called her an atrocious nominee who deserves to be defeated. They compared her defense of Edward Snowden, the fugitive who stole U.S. secrets, to an attorney general who thinks the mob gets a bad rap. Her refusal to accept U.S. intelligence findings that Assad gassed his own people, they said, was like a nominee for OMB director not being able to count. Does any of this give you pause putting her in charge of the U.S. intelligence community? Yes or no?
No, Margaret, look, these are publications that attacked Donald J. Trump obsessively, but those publications don't determine who the president is, the American people do. And Donald J. Trump is the person who determines who his cabinet is, not these publications that I think, frankly, have lost relevance.
The Senate will ultimately decide.
Well, the Senate will provide advice and consent as is its constitutional obligation, but I feel confident that Tulsi Gabbard will ultimately get through. Two things that are important to know about Tulsi. First of all, she is a career military servant who's had a classification at the highest levels for nearly 2 decades. She has impeccable character, impeccable record of service, and she also is a person who I think is going to bring some trust back to the intelligence services. The bureaucrats at our intelligence services have gotten completely out of control. They've been part of the weaponization of our political system, the weaponization of our justice system. We need to have good intelligence services who keep us safe, but part of that is restoring trust in those services, and we think Tulsi is the right person to do it.
That's why the president trust those intelligence services.
She recognizes that the bureaucrats have gotten out of control, and we need somebody there who's going to rein them in and return those services to their core mission of identifying information that's going to keep us safe.
You campaigned on lowering prices for consumers. We've seen all of these executive orders. Which one lowers prices?
We have done a lot, and there have been a number of executive orders that have caused already jobs to start coming back into our country, which is a core part of lowering prices. More capital investment, more job creation in our economy is one of the things that's going to drive down prices for all consumers, but also raise wages so that people can afford to buy the things that they need. If you look at our slate of executive orders, no, Margaret, prices are going to come down, but it's going to take a little bit of time, right? The president has been president for all of 5 days. I think that in those 5 days, he's accomplished more than Joe Biden did in 4 years. It's been an incredible breakneck pace of activity. We're going to work with Congress. We're, of course, going to have more executive orders, and we're going to try, the way that you lower prices is that you encourage more capital investment into our country. And yes,
here we go. This is very interesting when we are looking at JD Vance just owning Margaret here. Now, you can see multiple times she has a very smug look on her face when she's asking questions and she's smiling. So prices aren't going to come down. So you realize it's the Senate that does, speaking to a former senator since he just resigned in order to be the vice president. But the Senate does the advice and consent, don't you? Yes, he knows all of those things, Margaret. Now, let's talk about some of these things, in one for one. The confirmation of Pete Hegseth. The reason that we want Pete Hegseth as the Secretary of Defense is because he is going to be a change maker. He is going to buck the status quo, and he is going to become lethal again, make the military just concentrate on lethality instead of DEI and wokeness. Now, here's typical way that a Secretary of Defense happens. Either they were in the military for a significant period of time, becoming a general officer, 4 stars more than likely, a chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, or something major, and they come out, and for the past 2 Secretary of Defenses that was initially done by Mattis and by Trump, you have to get a waiver. You have to be out of the military for a certain period of time before you can come and be the Secretary of Defense. And the waiver happened, and it was I believe it's 2 years, 2 to 7 years. I think you have to be out, and those waivers happen. But on the by and by, if you're not a career military, then you are either in the military or you've worked for the Department of Defense for a long period of time. You've gotten out. You've gone and served on a board for a defense contractor for a number of years, and then you come back, and then you get to be Secretary of Defense. And you're back in the same system. Where on that were you leading 3 million people? Nowhere were you doing that. You were sitting on a board with 20 other people making hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars a year, working 4 times a year, once a quarter. And so that's the standard that it seems that the Democrats and liberal media want to say that is why Pete Hegseth was not qualified, because he didn't go through that career path. Now, never mind the fact that he was a warfighter as an infantry officer and did multiple combat deployments, Iraq, Afghanistan, Guantanamo Bay, and then also started two nonprofits, and then also, he became an reporter for Fox News and was a media personality. But that's no different than anybody that's in communications that goes and be the secretary, the press secretary, or things like that. So anyway, he knows how to shoot, move, and communicate. He's a war fighter. He knows how to shoot. He knows how to move. He's super in shape, doing push-ups. That was one of the questions that got asked him. How many push-ups did he do that morning? He said 3 sets of 47. And then he knows how to communicate. And that's exactly what in the Army we do. We shoot, move, and communicate. And that's what he's going to do. He's already has executive orders that are banning transgenderism in the military. Why? Because it doesn't increase lethality. Yes, it's a social experiment, but it doesn't increase lethality. And according to these executive orders, it takes upwards to 12 months if they actually go through their gender reassignment surgery of recovery. And they're on narcotics, which means they're not deployable. And let me tell you something. If you're in the military and you are not deployable, meaning you're ready to go fight, the military doesn't need you. If you're not deployable, the military doesn't need you. It's not a social welfare organization. It is designed to fight and win our nation's wars. And that's what we need to be concentrating on. And Margaret was just hounding on Pete Hegseth, and look, it's done. He is the SecDef. As of today, he had his first day on the job, and he's ready to get after it. Now, when we talk about inflation and where was the executive order that brought down prices and brought down inflation, and she's got this little smirk on her face, and I'll see if I can put it back up there so we can watch her smirking while she's asking these questions. Well, guess what? It took 4 years to get us into this position through horrible policies by the Biden-Harris administration. It's going to take more than 5 days to get us out of it. And that's how long, as of yesterday, that's how long Trump had been president. Today, is Monday. Tomorrow will be the 7 days that he's been in office. So, I mean, to say, well, you said that you were going to bring down prices. It's been 5 days. It's Sunday. It's the weekend. How come the prices haven't come down? Well, guess what? It's going to take a hot second to get us out of this mess. And luckily, we have a Republican president, a Republican-controlled majority in both the House and the Senate, and a conservative Supreme Court. Hopefully, we can fix all of these things that got broken over the past 4 years. Now, one of the things that she was talking about is, Tulsi Gabbard, and she, is this supposed, double agent working for Russia. And really, that really got started by Hillary Clinton back in the 2016 Democrat primary, where Tulsi was running against Clinton. And Clinton was threatened that there was another woman that was starting to make headway. And so she's the one that initially passed down the rumor saying that she was a double agent for Russia. And that was immediately to discredit her. She was treated poorly. She was a Democrat congressperson from Hawaii. She immediately left the Democrat Party, and now she campaigns MAGA. Now, here's the thing. She is also a reservist and a lieutenant colonel in the Army National Guard, okay? So she is in a civil affairs unit, which is a special operations type unit. Now, she's not a Navy SEAL, she's not a Green Beret, right? But she still works in the special operations community. You have psychological warfare and civil affairs, and so she's in that. So she has a top secret with SCI level clearance, and she's probably had that for 20 years. So the top secret and special compartmentalized information. It's the highest security clearance you can possibly have, and she has that already. So she has already been deemed worthy of having such a high-level security clearance. And, I mean, give me a break. So she's got this super high-level security clearance. Can she be trusted with classified material? Give me a break. Yes, is the answer. The federal government has already determined that she can be trusted. Because if she couldn't, she would have lost that security clearance. So anyway, Margaret's questions are completely out of line. They're nonsensical. And, you know, by going and talking to people, she was punished for talking to Assad. Why wouldn't you want to go talk to Assad? I mean, why wouldn't you want to have somebody that's going to handle this? I mean, we have people that are in the State Department all the time that talk to people all the time. The problem is when you stop talking to somebody, honestly, that you run into errors. That's why that there is a dedicated phone line in the White House that goes directly to President Putin in the Kremlin, and they have that line of communication open at all times. Now they test it every once in a while to make sure it works, but still, I mean, it is a direct line that if there is a period of time that there could be a miscommunication and we need to get somebody, an adult in the room to slow things down, it happens. And so that's why you want to have those lines of communication. So I don't fault her for that. Now, I'm not excited about Snowden and her support for him. I think Snowden, is a traitor. He's still hiding out in Russia. I think he's even been extended Russian citizenship. Honestly, if you really didn't think he did anything wrong, come on back to the United States and plead your case, honestly. So I definitely don't think that I disagree with her on that. I don't think that makes her a Russian spy. It's a disagreement that I happen to have concerning Snowden. But still, I mean, when you have all of this going on, and I wanted to break some of this down, but we'll do another episode on the rest of this interview. But JD Vance did just an amazing job of really stuffing her, and you can see that she's so proud of herself, and she thought she was asking some gotcha questions, but she didn't. I mean, especially when it comes to immigration, it's what. The reason that Donald Trump was elected was because of the economy, because of immigration, and to get rid of woke. To get rid of woke and to get rid of DEI and go back to merit-based and to go back to two genders, male and female. That's the reason why Donald Trump was elected and won and got all of the swing states, got the popular vote, and that's why he's the president of the United States of America. And this is why he picked JD Vance to be his vice president, because the man just knows what he's saying and is able to react in real time. So let me know how you think that portion of the interview went in the comments below. Thanks so much for tuning into Azimuth Podcast, and please stay tuned after these messages.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy our show with all the stories we share, we would love your support.
And it's as easy as clicking that subscribe or follow button. This will ensure you never miss an episode and keeps us bringing you these important stories. Your support makes a huge difference. Thank you so much for being part of our podcast family.
Thanks, and keep tuning in.
This is 500 pennies, worth $5, but it costs $18.50 to make. Is it worth it? Let's talk about it on Azimuth Podcast. I'm Barrett McNabb. The humble penny, a cornerstone of American currency and a symbol of small change. But today, the penny finds itself in the middle of a hot debate. Should we keep it, or is it time to say goodbye? Welcome to our explanation of why the U.S. government might eliminate the penny and what it means for all of us. Let's start with how a penny is made. The U.S. penny is minted in the United States Mint, which operates facilities in Philadelphia and Denver to produce billions of coins each year. Despite its coppery look, the penny isn't made entirely of copper. Since 1982, pennies have been made of 97.5% zinc, with just a thin coating of copper to give it that classic appearance. The design was introduced to cut costs as copper prices skyrocketed in the late 20th century. Each penny is stamped from a zinc disc coated in copper and meticulously inspected for quality before it enters circulation. This manufacturing process may seem straightforward, but here's the catch. Every single penny costs about 3.7 cents to make. That's more than 3 times its face value, almost 4 times. In fiscal year 2024 alone, the U.S. spent $119 million just to produce $32 million worth of pennies for circulation. That's a waste of $87 million. Multiply that over decades, and you can see why some policymakers are questioning its place in our economy. Now, this isn't a new problem. For 19 consecutive years, the production cost of the penny has exceeded its worth. The U.S. Met's annual reports reveal just how inflation, rising metal prices, and mostly zinc, which is what the switchover was designed to reduce costs, and increased manufacturing expenses have contributed to the penny's growing cost. Add that the environmental impact of mining zinc and copper, and the penny's sustainability comes into question. But what about its usefulness? Critics argue that pennies have lost their purchasing power. In fact, most vending machines, toll booths, and parking meters won't even accept them. Most of us let pennies pile up in jars, lose them under the couch cushions, or leave them at checkout counters. This lack of circulation means the mint has to produce more to replace those that are effectively lost. Other countries have faced the same dilemma. Canada, for example, stopped producing pennies in 2012, citing high cost and low utility. Businesses round cash transactions to the nearest 5 cents, and studies show that its impact on consumers has been negligible. In fact, the transaction was so smooth that many Canadians barely noticed. Could the U.S. follow suit? So here we go. Enter the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, led by Elon Musk. This innovative initiative aims to trim $2 trillion from the national budget by identifying and addressing inefficiencies across government operations. Eliminating the penny is just one piece of this ambitious plan. DOGE's mission is to streamline costs, reduce waste, and redirect resources toward critical areas like healthcare, infrastructure, and national defense. By phasing out the penny, DOGE estimates taxpayers could save over $100 million annually. These savings might seem small compared to the $2 trillion target, but they symbolize a broader effort to rethink outdated practices. This initiative is more than just about coins. It's about leading a culture shift towards fiscal responsibility and setting a precedent for bold reform. However, some worry that eliminating the penny could create new challenges. The nickel, which costs over 14 cents to produce, might need to be minted in greater quantities. This could affect and offset savings from discontinuing the penny. DOGE is actively researching solutions, including potential changes to the composition of other coins to reduce costs further and ensure a seamless transition. Another concern is how businesses would handle cash transactions without pennies. Would prices be rounded up, causing consumers to pay more? Research from countries like Canada and New Zealand suggests otherwise. In most cases, businesses round to the nearest 5 cents, and the impact on consumers is negligible. DOGE plans to work closely with small businesses, consumer advocates, and economists to ensure a fair and efficient transition. Now, about 15 years ago, I was at a ski resort, and you can imagine my surprise when I bought a sandwich at the top of the mountain at their little cantina, and the change came out to something and 37 cents, and they gave me 35 cents. And I said, oh, it's 37. They said, we don't use pennies. And so the interesting thing is I kind of got cheated out of the 2 cents. At the time, it wasn't that big a deal, but it made me kind of think about it like, wait a second, how come I'm being charged the 2 cents? Why didn't they just round that up to giving me 40 cents back instead? And they take the loss. And so it was interesting that the ski resort had me take the loss, and it kind of just made me ponder on whether or not I was being cheated. Now, in the grand scheme of things, 2 cents probably isn't that big a deal, but it takes me back to Superman 2 movie where Richard Pryor was a computer hacker and was grabbing up tenths of a cent that were rounded on paychecks, and wound up getting himself a Ferrari and a promotion because he figured out how to grab all those extra rounding errors. But still, this is an instance where there could be some people that are upset that they didn't get their 2 cents. However, if everything is just rounded and you never see that it was 37 cents or 38 cents or something like that to show that you're not getting your change, if it was just at 30, 35, 40, you'd never know that you were missing those 2 pennies. The debate over the penny isn't just about economics. It's also about tradition and sentiments. For many Americans, the penny represents Abraham Lincoln, the first president to appear on U.S. coinage. It's a tangible link to our history and a reminder of the values that we hold dear. And then there are the collectors who see the penny as a piece of art in history. Rare pennies like the 1909-SVDB can sell for thousands of dollars. For these enthusiasts, losing the penny would mean losing out a part of numeric culture, but even the collectors recognize the broader impacts of this debate. Now, I would definitely challenge that would increase the cost of the pennies that you have in your collection because there wouldn't be any more being made. In fact, I'll keep this jar just in case. So what happens next? Eliminating the penny would require an act of Congress, and while previous attempts have failed, DOGE's comprehensive approach may sway lawmakers by presenting clear savings, practical alternatives, and widespread support. DOGE hopes to rally the nation behind this cost-cutting measure. The real question is whether we as a nation are ready to embrace these changes. The penny is just the beginning of DOGE's efforts to modernize and optimize our financial systems. By addressing inefficiencies one step at a time, the U.S. could unlock significant savings, reduce waste, and pave the way for a more sustainable and prosperous future. So what do you think? Should we keep the penny or let it go? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching Azimuth Podcast. Stay tuned after these messages.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy our show with all the stories we share, we would love your support.
And it's as easy as clicking that subscribe or follow button. This will ensure you never miss an episode and keeps us bringing you these important stories. Your support makes a huge difference. Thank you so much for being part of our podcast family.
Thanks, and keep tuning in.